Welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we're going to get a first-hand look at life before and after drug addiction and prison. What a strange trip when drugs trade all hope for desperation, everything gets foobarred, and prison is the only option left. Our guest Colin is stepping up to tell his story. I don't know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but I do know we're going to start right now. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I've heard bits about your story. It's interesting. Before we get into the bad stuff, talk about life growing up in Iowa and being a kid and how this all sort of started.
To be honest with you, life as a kid in Northeast Iowa was fantastic and normal. And I look back and we had a large family, a very close family. My grandmother seemed like she was the center of it, and my mother and her sisters were all very close. So then my cousins and I were close, and we all kind of lived in the same neighborhood, and we had a great group of neighborhood kids. We spent our summers playing baseball, our falls playing football, and just all of the things that kids did in the early to mid 70s that were, I guess, fantastic and carefree. And you know, I didn't have a care in the world at that point in my life, and it was really something that I valued then and still do.
Now, you went to high school there?
I went to high school in Waukon, yes.
What was it like being a high school kid in a community like that?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to like junior high, middle school. And in 7th grade, I realized that I was a pretty good athlete. And school came pretty easily to me. And that was good. And I enjoyed the sports, I enjoyed the friends and everything. I got into 8th grade and I hurt my shoulder. And I think that I needed surgery on it, and I believe that that is when maybe some of my thinking started to lead me down a path that was not great. As I moved into high school, I was less concerned with school and less concerned with my future than I probably should have been, and more concerned with thrill seeking and making probably unhealthy choices, you know, and that, I believe, kind of set the tone for where my life went.
Now, those choices, though, there were a lot of other kids making unhealthy choices at the time.
Yes, there were, and I believe that I probably made more unhealthy choices than they did. And, you know, that was also when my first experience with someone very near to me losing their life due to drugs and alcohol happened. And he was a sophomore or a junior, I believe, in high school, and lost his life in a motorcycle accident due to drinking. And the thing about it was that we didn't learn from that. We went to the funeral and buried our friend and all drank for a week after that. And it seemed like that just kind of continued to happen year after year.
What was the first time that you remember having a drink or doing a drug?
I think the first time I remember actually having a drink was in about 7th grade. I drank at a family gathering, and I was sneaking drinks and ended up getting very, very sick and being punished for doing it. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to touch that again.
Famous last words.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When did you drink the second time?
I believe about halfway through 9th grade.
So you went a while on this, I'll never do this again.
Yes.
All right.
And I remember the escape that I felt and the freedom that I felt from the drinking. And I knew almost immediately that that was what I loved to do and that was what I was going to do.
So high school became
the very beginning of it. I actually went to rehab my first time halfway through my sophomore year.
Really?
Yes.
What stimulated that intervention? Did you get busted?
No, I didn't. I came home one day after a long weekend, and I had been gone for a few days, and my mother and a couple of uncles and my cousin were there, and they said, we're not going to watch you do this to yourself. You're coming with us. And they signed me into, I actually signed myself into an 8-week treatment program in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
And how'd that hold up once you got out?
And actually, after about 6 weeks of that was when that friend of mine died. And I signed myself out, and I was back at it full-time within a few days.
And then you went through the rest of high school with no problem?
Actually, I ended up not going back to high school after that, which is something I still regret. And I know I missed out on a lot of good years.
Well, thank you for sharing the sort of setup, because I know that things slide downhill pretty fast from
Yes,
this
they
point
do.
on, and we'll touch on that after the break. When we return with Colin, we'll talk about getting high in life, getting out of control. You don't want to miss this.
Believe in us.
Believe in us because
We giggle.
we grow.
We dream.
We fight.
We dance.
We heal.
We try. We create.
We hope.
We learn.
We believe we all have potential.
We are youth standing strong.
Hi, I'm Carnell. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, streaming shows, downloading files, and Skyping with family. That's why Mediacom recently boosted many of our internet speeds at no extra cost. We call it Always Faster Internet because we're always improving to meet your needs. And when you combine improved speeds with hassle-free Wi-Fi, you get super fast speeds all over the house. So more gets done even faster. The power to make a good thing even better, the power to simplify.
Welcome back. We're joined by Colin and his story of survival when drugs took control of his life, and how his world came crashing down and landed him in prison. He had a caring family around him, caring community, and the spiral wasn't fast. It took a while. Colin, we're in high school. You dropped out of high school,
Yes.
and a lot of years went by. You know, you had some good interventions that didn't work. What happened?
I believe that somewhere along the line, the constant drinking and the drugs began to erode away at my self-respect, and I began to lose hope, and I began not to care. And, you know, through my late teens and early 20s, it was a lot of drinking, recreational drugs, if there is such a thing. And, you know, I maintained employment and lived a normal kind of functioning life, but my weekends were hard.
So you kept, you know, you were working, paying the bills, everything good, but you partied.
I partied on the weekends, and this carried on through actually my 20s into my early 30s. And I had a period of 5 years where I didn't drink, but I still used marijuana daily through that, and I thought I was doing the right thing, but obviously a drug is a drug is a drug.
You thought it was better than alcohol.
Absolutely.
Didn't work out.
And
that
I
way.
should have learned my lesson at that point, but didn't.
Did you have interventions or people trying to help you?
Yes, constantly, you know, and I had family that cared so much about me and tried to help me in any way they could. And I went through rehab 3 or 4 more times, and it just, nothing clicked. And I think by this point I had somehow developed a victim mentality. And a lot of, at the time I thought it was self-loathing, but I realized now it was more self-pity than anything. And that kind of just continued to drive my poor decision making.
What is it about the high that keeps you coming back? Because for people that have never really gotten to that point, it must have been quite compelling. You don't seem like a negative human being. You seem like an optimistic person. And,
It's been a lot of, I'm sorry for interrupting. It's been a lot of work to become this optimistic human being. I think the compelling thing for me was an escape. I didn't want to deal with myself. I didn't want to deal with the responsibility of the choices that I was making, and I didn't want to deal with the emotions that I was feeling. And it was almost a quest for freedom that ended up costing me my freedom. And I think it was, like I said, it was always an escape for me, an escape from reality, escape from life. And pretty soon it wasn't even that anymore. It was a necessity. I would get to the point where I would wake up in the morning hungover and barely being able to see straight and tell myself, I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. By 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, I would leave work and I would go throw back 4 or 5 shots of bourbon to keep myself from possibly going into seizures or shaking and getting very, very sick. And actually the last time I withdrew from alcohol, I was in intensive care, I believe for 4 days, and having withdrawal symptoms up to 10 days later.
So you're struggling with this, sort of living in and out of addiction because you see it happening to yourself.
Yes.
You can't stop it.
Right.
And then something happened, all of a sudden meth comes into the picture.
Yes.
How did that start?
I'm not really sure. I believe that I got curious. I was seeing a lot of the anti-meth messages out there, and part of me has always been a thrill seeker or an adrenaline junkie type of thing. And when I first started using meth, I thought this is some kind of miracle, because for the first time in my life, I don't have that overwhelming compulsion to drink. And so to me, I felt like it was actually saving me from being a slave to alcohol. And it wasn't full-blown all day, every day meth usage at first. It was a little bit here and there, but it quickly, very, very quickly turned into my drug of choice and my everyday crutch. And
Did you continue working while you were doing meth all the time?
after I started doing meth was when the working stopped. And my life was crumbling down around me completely. But there's something about meth that destroys your sense of right and wrong. It destroys any sense of responsibility for me. And it was still like saying, it's okay, you still have me.
So you've stopped working, now you need money, then you started cooking.
I actually never started cooking.
Never cooked it, okay.
No, but I did start dealing. And I got involved with some people that I shouldn't have, and quantity was readily available. And I was thinking, this is a lot easier than working. And I'm helping these people out because they don't have to run around and chase things and look for the dope man. And I didn't even take into account for 1 minute the amount of lives that I was helping to destroy at that time. And of course, I was so new to it, I didn't know the destruction that it caused. And that's been one of the hardest things to deal with since I got sober and started making better choices.
Did you have a lot of years slip by? Did it seem like they just disappeared? Or?
Yes, it just seemed like they're gone, and I lost the trust of my family, my parents, my children, my siblings, my extended family, and every positive force I ever had in my life. I burned those bridges, and in a way at the time it almost felt like relief, because I didn't have those people to worry about disappointing anymore. And I know that is a really unhealthy way of looking at anything, but I was a very unhealthy person at the time.
We're going to take a short break and take a look at not only how it all came crashing down, but how you've been building it back up. When we come back, we'll talk about how change started in Colin's life, how hope found its way back into his life. After, of course, he tells us what the critical event was that sent him to prison. Stay with us, you don't want to miss this.
Believe in us. Believe in us because
We giggle.
we grow. We dream.
We fight.
We dance.
We heal.
We try. We create.
We hope.
We learn.
We believe we all have potential.
We are youth standing strong.
Hi, I'm Carnell. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, streaming shows, downloading files, and Skyping with family. That's why Mediacom recently boosted many of our internet speeds at no extra cost. We call it always faster internet because we're always improving to meet your needs. And when you combine improved speeds with hassle-free Wi-Fi, you get super fast speeds all over the house. So more gets done even faster. The power to make a good thing even better, the power to simplify.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're joined by Colin, his story and his path to restoration as he picks up the pieces of his life. Colin, you're on a good path now, but something happened really bad. I don't want to dwell on that too long, but let's talk about what really started the wake-up call.
What started the wake-up call, I guess, was actually in 2009. I was arrested in walk-on for a couple of deliveries and did a little bit of time for that and really didn't take it seriously. So I continued doing what I was doing for the next few years. And I'm sorry. December 2012, I found out that I had a federal indictment issued for me for some deliveries in 2010.
Meth deliveries.
Meth deliveries. And it was a shock, to say the least. But immediately, I thought to myself, I am tired. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of being empty. And I'm tired of not having any self-respect. And I'm tired of not being able to look in the mirror and like what I see. So I decided at that moment that the indictment was going to be an opportunity for me to get myself back. And at the time, I really didn't know if there was any hope for me to get my relationship with my children and family back. But that was ultimately what I was hoping for also. The first year that I was in prison, all of the emotions that I had been running from for the last 30 years came back, and they came back strong. And for the first year, I really beat myself up a lot. And I would be laying in a bunk at night, getting ready to go to sleep, and these memories would come back. And I decided that if I stayed stuck in that, there was no way I was going to be able to move forward and forgive myself. So I made the choice then that I was going to take my foot out of that quicksand, and I was going to start moving forward. And the only way I would be able to do that is by trying to do things every day to make better choices, to become a better person. And that's what I did. And I was very fortunate to get involved in the RDAP program in federal prison, which is a 9-month, 500-hour program.
What is RDAP?
It's a residential drug abuse program.
Okay.
And it's all based on cognitive behavioral therapy and personal accountability and, retraining ourselves to think differently and be more optimistic, and to train our self-talk, so we're not constantly saying negative things and looking at everything negatively. And that is where I developed a huge sense of gratitude and tried to be objective in all things that concerned me and with other people. And it also gave me this compelling desire to try to reach out to others and to help others.
How much time did you spend in prison overall then?
Just a little over 3 years.
Okay. And from our prior conversation, you'd mentioned you actually, by going through this program, stayed a little longer so you could qualify for something else that you knew would help you.
Well, yes, I got to the end of my sentence and I was going to be released, but I was going to be released to the street with no job and no money and no driver's license and no car. And I thought that that's not going to be good. And it's not a constructive way to attempt your reentry. So I applied to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to extend my sentence 6 months so I could go to a halfway house and get a job and get my license and save some money and help reintegrate me back into the world.
And it's been 4 years now since then.
It's
Or
actually,
longer.
yes, it's been a little longer since I went in. I've been out of prison almost 2 years right now. And it's been an amazing 2 years. Frightening at first, but the one thing I do now that I probably never did before in my life was face my challenges head on and keep moving forward and not get discouraged. And I refuse to let negativity sneak its way back into my life.
And that means drugs and alcohol.
That means drugs and alcohol, and it means negative thinking and anything that could lead me back to drugs and alcohol. And I remain constantly grateful. And people sometimes tell me, you should be proud of yourself. You're strong and you've done better than a lot of people, or you made it through this. I don't look at it like that sometimes. I look at it as that I'm luckier than most. And I'm grateful and fortunate, and now I'm in a better place than I ever thought I'd be in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. When we come back from the break, I'd like you to share some insights and advice for people that might be feeling what you've been through and that you might be able to help. After a short break, we'll invite Colin to share his ideas and advice he thinks can help people understand not only substance abuse and addiction, but that emptiness that can drive that force in their lives. Maybe we can learn something that can save the life of someone that's important to us. See you after the break.
Believe in us. Believe in us because
We giggle.
we grow. We dream.
We fight.
We dance.
We heal.
We try. We create.
We hope.
We learn.
We believe we all have potential.
We are youth standing strong.
Hi, I'm Carnell. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, streaming shows, downloading files, and Skyping with family. That's why Mediacom recently boosted many of our internet speeds at no extra cost. We call it always faster internet because we're always improving to meet your needs. And when you combine improved speeds with hassle-free Wi-Fi, you get super fast speeds all over the house. So more gets done even faster. The power to make a good thing even better, the power to simplify.
Welcome to Surviving Bad, and our special guest today, Colin, has shared some of the things he's been through, and he's here to share some ideas and advice with you. Pay close attention, could make a difference in your life and the life of someone you love. Colin, Is there any story that you can share with us that would sort of give us a hint as to some of the changes you've been through and how your life has been changed?
I do have a story that comes to mind. Shortly after my release from prison, I had heard that a friend of mine was also being released. And I called him up to see how he was doing, and he told me that when he was in prison, he had found out he had inoperable cancer, and they gave him less than a year to live. And I told him at that time, I said, you know, I love you, and I'm thinking about you, and I want the best for you, but the choices you're making, I can't spend time with you, and I can't hang out with you, you know. And he said, which surprised me, he said, I understand that, and thank you. He went into the hospital for a while, and then was released, and about 7 months later, I suppose it was, I had gotten a call that said he was back in there, and it was close to the end for him. So I made the decision at that point. I had to go see him. And when I went up to see him, he told me, you know, he said, 6 months ago, I quit getting high. And he said, if I ever would have known life could be this good, I would have quit a long time ago. And he said this knowing he had probably less than 2 months to live. And he meant it. And it was great to see the look of peace in his eyes and the smile on his face when he said it.
So maybe you feel a little bit like your family does now,
You know,
knowing that you've been through this and come around.
I think maybe so. I think you're probably right.
You know, let me ask you a question. If you could go back in life and find a point, maybe you can't change your own life, but if you can go back to some place where you would change something you've done that might resonate with somebody watching the show, maybe one of the young people watching, what would you do?
Honestly, for my own life personally, I probably wouldn't change anything because it's taken everything that I've been through to put me where I am today. But for any young people that are watching, I believe that the best thing I can say is if you feel hopeless, or if you feel like no one cares, or if you feel empty or anger and you don't know where it's coming from, find somebody to talk to, if you can, because there's somebody who cares. And there's always hope. If you're breathing and you're taking in air and there's any life left in you, there's hope.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today, and keep your eye on Mediacom for our next episode where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration, only on Surviving Bad on Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.